We've been talking about all different kinds of networks: small business networks, home networks, enterprise networks. And in our exercise here, we are going to create one of the most simple kinds of networks, which is a peer-to-peer network. In this network, we will have two computers connected by a switch. I'm going to take a few minutes and review for you the lab Building a Simple Network. We're going to use Packet Tracer for our simulation tool to build our network. Packet Tracer is a simple-to-use simulation program that allows us to build networks that function very similarly to an actual network. So the first thing we're going to do here in our network is assemble the components. Our networking components are routers and switches and the other types of connectivity tools that we use in creating a computer network. So right now for this lab, we're going to select a switch. So here's a switch device. Switches, as you learned earlier, have many ports on them, and they're primarily used to connect computing devices. So now we need to create our end user devices. So I'm going to select the end user devices and then grab some computers and move them up onto the screen. So this lab in particular has two computers. So we're going to put two computers out onto our workspace. Now, we don't have a network until we do a couple of things. The first thing is we have to connect these devices physically. They are not wireless, so they will need to be wired. We also have to enter some settings so that each of the computers will be able to communicate with the other computer based on their IP addresses. So let's look first at connecting our devices. This is an Ethernet switch, so obviously we're going to have to use an Ethernet cable. So I'm going to select an Ethernet cable, and then I'm going to connect the PC from its Ethernet port to an Ethernet port on the switch. Once I do that, both devices are going to become aware that they are actually connected to each other. In the case of the PC, usually on the back of the PC there is a light that indicates that it is now communicating and that it recognizes that there's another device that in a sense speaks the same language. We're going to take the next cable and we're going to plug that into the other PC and into another port on the switch. Now the physical connection has been made. Both devices are connected through the Ethernet switch to each other using standard Ethernet cables. But they still can't communicate with each other yet. So we're going to have to make some address assignments. So we're going to open the device, and you can see there's numerous tabs here. The first one is the physical, and you can see that here is the PC. It's forward looking version. And you can also zoom in or zoom out based on what you are wanting to look at. But what we're going to look at down here are the actual connections. Our cable went into the Ethernet port on this device. So now we can also go to the desktop. And just like your desktop on your regular computer, there are icons that represent different programs. The very first thing we have to do in order for these computers to communicate is assign them an IP address. So we're going to go into the IP address assignment. For computers to communicate on an IP network, basically the most simple IP network is one like we're building here. It requires two devices, and those devices have to agree on an IP address assignment that puts them both on the same network. So we're going to assign the IP address 192.168.1.10 to this computer. And you can see that Packet Tracer automatically filled in a subnet mask And later on when we talk about IP addressing, we'll get a lot more into how the subnet mask interacts in order for these two computers to know that they're on the same network. So we have this computer now configured with an IP address, and we're going to go to the other computer and configure it. And we're going to do the exact same process of going to the IP addressing, and we're going to give it an IP address as well. And as you can see, it also gets a default subnet mask. So now we have the two computers, and they are connected, and they both have addresses. In order to test whether or not our two computers can communicate over this IP network, I'm going to go in and use the ping command. So I'm going to open the command prompt on my computer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see what my IP address is, because I want to be able to make sure that my destination IP address is not the same as my IP address, because everybody has to be unique on the same network. So I'm going to use a command called ipconfig. ipconfig gives me access to the information about the IP address assigned on this computer. As you can see, this computer is 192.168.110. The other computer, which we are now going to test communications to, is 192.168.111. So I'm going to use the ping command to see if we can communicate with the other computer. Now you can see that I was successful. It tells me that all of my packets got from my computer to the other computer and back.